Hi, I'm DeLaney Gabriel. I'm a holistic anti-aging practitioner. My primary practice is in Santa Barbara, California. I also have offices in Sacramento, where I established my practice in 1984, and then opened a second office in Carmel in 2000. I've been in Santa Barbara for the last 3 years, and I'm going to be running through a seminar that I gave in Montecito last year, because my goal is to share the work that I do with anybody who's interested, and have people who may not be able to come to see me or may not have access to others in the holistic community who have the broad knowledge base that I do, both in treatment and in management, as well as diagnosing hormone deficiencies and other chemicals and imbalances in the body through what I call deficiencies and imbalances. So I'll be referring to this, which was the seminar that I gave. I don't know if it's going to be large enough for you to read on YouTube, so I'll be going through some of this with you and help walk through it. Today, on June 21st, 2016, prompted me to do this seminar with the support of my family, my daughter Kamala, who is here, and my granddaughters that I'd love to introduce to you. First of all, this is Katie, and Katie is 12 years old, be 13 in November, and Maggie, who is almost 11 years old. She wants me to say 11, not 10. So these two girls and my daughter have greatly inspired me to share my philosophy, which otherwise are referred to as my religion, because I'm so steeped in the work that I do and the experience that I have, that I want to leave this to my daughter and to them and my family as my legacy, because I know the work that I do has so much value, and it goes beyond what's commonly done in medicine. And I want these two young gals, my daughter and my family, to know their options and to learn how to trust that inner voice when your doctor says do this, do that, and that's not what you want to do, but you don't have anybody to rely on it. I want them to be able to look back and look at grandma, introduce them. So thank you, girls. So a little bit about how I got where I am. I started out back in the 60s studying nutrition, getting a lot of information about health. I went into dietetics, learning about the 4 basic food groups and so forth, and that never felt right to me. What that felt like was that it could likely be enough to keep a healthy person healthy. So over the years in my training as a dietitian, I learned that I couldn't even recommend vitamins or supplements to people who were unhealthy. I couldn't help them regain their health fast enough. So I pretty quickly dropped out at that level. But what's good, and I realize now, is I have that base, which is really important about food and the food groups, and I know better ways of doing that. That helps people who are ill. So after I'd spent time with that, and had established my practice in Sacramento dealing with Candida, Epstein-Barr virus, chronic fatigue, those kinds of things, I moved my practice to Preventive Medical Clinic of Sacramento and work with world-renowned physician Gary Gordon. And what I learned from Gary Gordon and at the clinic was profound, because it was different from anything that medicine really relied upon and used as their base. And it felt right to me. It felt like truth to me. It was thinking outside the box. So here I was, a naturopathic doctor, training with a medical doctor who became my mentor. So I had the opportunity to learn things hands-on and in real-life situations, which is very different from being, say, in medical school or naturopathic college or in herbal studies, to work with real people with real diseases and conditions who came to that clinic because other doctors around the world had failed them. So I became a very integral part of that clinic, and Dr. Gordon referred all of his patients to me. That was where I first got introduced to lab tests. And because I was there, and insurance back in 1989 and 88 was pretty good about covering any blood tests that a physician would order, because physicians, I really believe, were more revered there and had more freedom, whereas now they're so confined by insurance companies. And if doctors now order all the tests that I recommend, for the most part, they're committing insurance fraud. So if they write a diagnosis for assessing or what we used to call ruling out a condition or a disease, and that person doesn't really have it, and you're really looking for anti-aging and how do you stay healthy, again, the doctor's committing insurance fraud. So don't expect your doctor to do that. He's only going to be able to run tests that you have as primary symptoms. And you know what? That leaves out most people who are wanting help with their hormones and refining their health and looking at optimum health instead of just getting by free of symptoms. So when I was looking into all these conditions that people came to the clinic for, and when I was trying to help them through nutrition, through what I knew about homeopathy, herbology, all kinds of sophisticated, progressive, anti-aging tools, what I learned was that there was something that was missing. So after being there for about a year and a half and helping all these people with all of my knowledge, with all of Dr. Gordon's knowledge that he passed on to me, I was sitting at my desk in my office one day with the door closed, and I was sitting there, I'm just going to use this, everybody kind of knows the pie graph, so I'm sitting there doodling on a piece of paper with the pie graph, and I look at, okay, we treat a lot of cardiovascular disease, we treat diabetes, arthritis, inflammatory diseases. We treated parasitology cases from people around the world who came to the clinic. A lot of candida, Epstein-Barr virus, chronic fatigue, a lot of issues like that. So I'm sitting there in the quiet of my office here in the center, realizing we were treating all these things, adrenal sufficiency and, oh my gosh, hypothyroidism, but we weren't treating it to the extent that I felt like the people should be getting the results and why they came there. So what I did in sitting here doodling, I said, what in the world is it that all of these things have in common? And in a flash, over my right shoulder came a voice, and it said to me, hormones. It was so profound that I had to look around like somebody was there. And in that moment, I got what I call God bumps, and I realized that was God talking to me. And in that moment, I reflected back to the time when I was 9 years old in school in Sparks, Oklahoma, and the teacher asked each of the classmates to stand and say what they would like to be when they grew up. And what I said was that I wanted to be a preacher. So in that moment, when I heard this voice say hormones, I knew that was my calling. So, but having been born in Missouri, the show me state, I felt like I had to prove that I had to find scientific studies to validate my beliefs, because this was not commonly practiced. And those of you who know Sacramento know that it's a government city and very conservative. So I had a lot of physicians who would be not happy and adverse to what I would be saying. So I had to discover this knowledge base. So for the next few years, with the help of my daughter, Kamala, we would go to UC Davis Med Library there in Sacramento, and I would research the microfiche, everything that I could, kind of looking, I wanted to prove myself right, but I was open to proving myself wrong, because I knew that there were 9 good reasons to do the work that I had been led to with hormones, but I was looking for one better reason not to. And I can tell you to this day, roughly 32 years later, I have not found that one better reason not to. I've only found more better reasons to do that. So that opportunity led me to going to a conference in New Orleans and meeting Dr. John Lee, who was the pioneer really in hormone therapy. So while I had connected with Dr. Gary Gordon, who was world-renowned and pioneer in all kinds of alternative and integrative medicine and the pioneer of chelation therapy, here now I was with Dr. John Lee as my mentor in hormone therapy, and namely progesterone for the start. Then when I was asked by someone from the California legislature to give a presentation to women, it was in celebration of women's rights and women's suffrage. So when I did that, I wrote my presentation on super women need super hormones, because what I had seen over the years, the 10 years prior, was that so many women, corporate women, business women, started retiring because they basically lost confidence because they were having hormonal issues, not sleeping well, night sweats. And then this woman came to me who was a big real estate agent, representative with Coldwell Banker in Sacramento, and she was in her mid-50s. She told me that she had been sitting around the table at the conference table in a meeting, and it was her turn to give an evaluation. And in that, she started turning red from the neck up, started getting the little beads across her lip, and that she noticed that this young guy, half her age, was sitting across, looking at her, tapping his foot, and making some very smirky remarks. And she knew that her position was threatened because she could be replaced by somebody half her age. And sure enough, her knowing that caused her to want to drop out and just go out and ride her horses and work in her garden. And that infuriated me because I saw that being really recognized in her and in others. And that's when I really took up the cross to bear for leading the march in women for their hormones. And from that, what I wanted is for everybody to know their options. I want to keep women in the workforce. I want to keep people alive and functioning, doing whatever they want to do and not dropping out of society because they have hormone issues, with memory loss, with insomnia, all of those kinds of things, many of which are listed on here if you can read it. So what I want to talk about, I'll give you a little bit of my background. And so these are my different mentors and some of my education and kind of where I've gotten where I am. But one thing in closing this segment, and then more about hormones will be covered in the next segment. We'll go through these and a lot of the work that I do with blood tests. But what I want to make clear is that there's a huge difference in the work that I do and in the work that is done in medicine, far to the left, and the health food store, far to the right. So I practice integrating all of those therapies and managing that based on your symptoms and lab test results and looking how to treat and measure that. So I integrate both of those. But I want anybody to know in all the thinking that I do when I'm talking about how awful microwaves are, how awful Roundup is, and the glyphosates, and all these things, and all the chemicals that cause the cancers that lead to blaming hormones for things when that's not the issue. So I pretty much want you to know that I believe in hormones for life and at levels that are appropriate and continuous lab testing to modify and follow your treatment. Thank you. Watch for segment 2.